All right, welcome. Today we are tackling a massive question. What is faith? And I don't mean just some vague, fuzzy feeling. We're talking about a powerful, concrete principle, one that can literally shape history. So let's just dive right in.
So, to really get to the bottom of this, let's start with a big picture question. What actually defines a great and faithful life? You might think you know the answer, but we're going to explore this through a historical example that is, well, it's pretty surprising. It might just flip the script on what you expect.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting. We've got a genuine puzzle on our hands. You look at the life of Joseph, it's a total blockbuster, right? Goes from being a slave to basically the prime minister of Egypt, saves an entire nation from famine, incredible stuff. But then, when the Bible's Hall of Faith sums up his entire life, it picks one single moment. Just one, his dying command about his bones. Seriously? His bones? Why that? Why not the incredible rise to power, the wisdom, the forgiveness? That one question right there is the key that unlocks this whole topic. All right, let's unpack this mystery, and we'll start with Joseph. Section 1 is all about how faith can act as this profound, rock-solid certainty about the future, even when everything you see tells you it's impossible.
Okay, before we get any further, let's nail down a working definition here. According to the source material, faith isn't just this general, vague belief in, something out there. No, it's something way more specific. It's a conviction, a deep-down certainty that comes from hearing a specific promise from God, and then, and this is the key part, holding on to that promise as if it's more real, more solid than the very world you can see and touch.
So what was that specific promise that Joseph was clinging to? Well, it was this one. And get this, it wasn't even a promise made to him. It was made to his great-grandfather Abraham centuries before. It was a wild story about his descendants being enslaved, God judging their oppressors, and then a massive, triumphant exodus. And you have to appreciate the timescale here. We're talking about over 200 years passing between when that promise was made and when Joseph acted on it on his deathbed. 200 years? This tells you his faith wasn't based on what was happening right then and there. Nope, it was anchored to a word spoken generations, literally generations, before he was even a thought.
And this right here is the heart of the conflict. Just look at the two realities. On one hand, you have the world Joseph could see. He was practically a prince in Egypt, the world's only superpower at the time. His family was safe, they were prosperous, there wasn't a single cloud on the horizon suggesting slavery was coming. Zero evidence. But then there was the unseen promise, and that promise told a totally different story. A story of slavery, oppression, and then a miraculous escape. Faith for Joseph was the ability to look at those two conflicting realities and decide that the unseen one, the promise, was actually more certain than the powerful, comfortable world he was living in.
Just think about this for a second. As second in command of Egypt, Joseph could have demanded a massive pyramid be built for him, right? That's what you did. Instead, his final, dying command was basically, "Don't you dare bury me here. When you all eventually leave, you are taking my bones with you." He was staking his entire legacy, everything he'd built, not on the mighty Egyptian empire he helped run, but on a future exodus he couldn't see, an event he knew was certain for one reason and one reason only, because God had said so. That is what we mean by future certainty.
So, that's faith staring down the distant future. But what about the here and now? What about when you're facing a crisis that's literally life or death, right in front of you? Well, for that, let's move on to our second case study, Moses' parents. This is where we see faith as present courage. And the situation they were in, it's hard to imagine anything more terrifying. Pharaoh, the most powerful man on earth, issues a decree of genocide. Every single baby boy born to the Hebrews is to be thrown into the river and killed. This wasn't some distant threat. This was a visible, tangible, and deadly command. And yet, the text makes this absolutely stunning statement. Faced with this horrific order from the most powerful man alive, they just weren't afraid. Let that sink in. So you gotta ask, why not? How is that even possible? Was it just parental love? That fierce, protective instinct kicking in? That seems like a pretty logical explanation, right? But the source material argues it's actually the exact opposite. Because think about it for a second. The more you love your child, the more terrified you would be of a threat like that. Plain old parental affection would have just cranked up the fear to an 11. No, their courage, we're told, came from something else. It came by faith.
They had heard a specific word from God, and that word, in their minds, had more weight, more authority, and more reality than Pharaoh's deadly command. God's unseen word literally overrode their fear of the king's very visible threat.
And that brings us to our third and, honestly, most powerful example, Moses himself. Because he faced the ultimate choice, a personal decision between the world he could see and the world he couldn't. And his choice shows us the third dimension of faith. Just look at the choice he had in front of him. It couldn't be more black and white. Path number 1, he's the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He gets it all. The treasures of Egypt, the pleasures, the power, the prestige, everything the world has to offer. And path number 2, affliction, suffering, being an outcast. I mean, on paper, it's not even a choice. It looks completely insane. But his decision wasn't some emotional heat-of-the-moment thing. Not at all. It was a calculated 3-step process. First, he actively refused his royal identity. He said no. Second, he deliberately chose to suffer with his people. He picked the hard road. And third, and this is the absolute kicker, he considered the unseen reward of that hard road to be more valuable than all the visible treasures of Egypt put together.
So what on earth was his motivation? Well, this one little line explains the whole thing. He made this completely illogical choice because he was looking ahead to the reward. His focus wasn't on the treasures he could see or the suffering he would immediately feel. His eyes were locked on the value of that unseen reward promised by God. He was seeing something that no one else could see, and he bet his entire life on it.
Okay, so let's recap. We've seen faith give certainty about the future, courage for the present, and clarity for a huge personal choice. So now let's pull all these threads together into one single principle of action.
Okay, so what have we learned? For Joseph, faith was certainty about a distant future. For his parents, it was courage for a terrifying present. And for Moses, it was the clarity to make a life-defining choice, because he could see the true value of things. Future, present, choice. It covers everything. So when you put it all together, faith, as we're defining it here, isn't some passive belief system. It's an active principle. It's a fundamental rewiring of your entire perspective. It's the conviction that the promises of God, the things you can't see, are actually more real, more valuable, and a more powerful motivator for how you live your life than all the stuff you can see and touch and measure in the world right in front of you.
And all of that really leaves us with one final big question. Joseph, Moses, his parents, they all made these incredible choices because they were looking toward an unseen reward. So the question for us is, what unseen reward is shaping our choices? Is there one? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining me.